I honestly feel like before I became sober, I was like almost planning my retirement, to be honest with you. Like I was like, okay, I can do this for 5 more years. And then as soon as I kind of made that separation and was able to have 2 hours sleep after a gig and not be like going through an airport sweating and just like, you know, and I think that eliminating that helped me. But I was like, oh, you know what?
Ever wonder how top DJs actually built their careers?
I had to do 15 years of hard work to get any of the recognition that I wanted.
Where I saw a turning point in my career is when I became true to myself.
From marketing and mindset to networking and negotiation, I'm giving you the tools you need to build a lasting career in dance music.
Give them bits of you and your everyday life.
You have to change the way you view the word no. Like me, I'm encouraged by it.
Join me, Olivia Mancuso, and industry leaders as we reveal what it really takes to turn your passion into profit. This is Elevated Frequencies. You know what's crazy about breakthrough moments? They never happen when you're trying to force them. So listeners and people who follow me on social media have probably heard me harp on this concept of iteration, right? Figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and then iterating. And the one thing that I iterated on this year, which was like my breakthrough moment, I was making these house music history videos, like digging to the past tracks, past artists, and kind of profiling the history behind them. And the videos did okay, but they weren't doing great. And so one day I was sitting with my brother thinking, okay, what can I do more for social media? And at this time I had like 6,000 followers. This was in February of this year, 2025. And he was like, well, what if you take this house music history concept and just move it to present day and profile people who are popular today? And I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. Let me try that. And so I iterated on this and I made a video about the Paradise Party and label and Jamie Jones. And I called it Jamie Jones' Best Business Decision. And I posted it on February 14th, not really expecting it to break like 100 likes. Like that's what my content had been doing. And I'm sitting there at dinner. It's Valentine's Day. I don't have service. I'm getting a few bars here or there. And then all of a sudden, I get like 500 notifications from Instagram out of nowhere. And I'm like, that's weird. And so I finally get on Instagram later that night. And during that time that I didn't have service, the video had blown up. And I didn't even realize it at the time because I was getting so many comments that Jamie Jones' manager commented on it, like all these important people. The next day, Jamie Jones follows me and he shares the video to his story. And that was the most exciting and validating thing that had happened to me in a while. That video got me like 2,000 followers in basically a week. And that was really the fuel that kickstarted this next iteration of my career and my content. And I credit that video with the reason why I now have over 25,000 followers or close to it. And so on this show, so many people have credited Jamie Jones with being the person who inspired them or being the person who gave them their first shot, opening one of his Paradise parties in Ibiza, or was the one to play one of their tracks that no one else would play and made it go viral. So he's credited as this mentor and this breaker of chains for so many people, so many artists, but he also was that for me. So when I reached out to his management team and said, hey, could Jamie and I do an interview during ADE? And they said, yes. I mean, like I fell on my ass. I was like, wow, this is crazy. This is an incredibly insightful interview. I'm so grateful that he gave it to me. We dive deep into his journey from learning to DJ through Carl Cox radio tutorials to becoming the architect of Paradise, one of dance music's most authentic global brands. We explore how his 8-year sobriety journey has actually amplified his creativity, his evolution from being mentored by legends like Damian Lazarus to now being that breakthrough person for countless artists, plus what he thinks of the current state of dance music. So enjoy. You spend a lot of alone time in hotel rooms. You travel a lot. When you're alone with your thoughts, what comes up for you most often?
Wow, that's a good question. Good opener. Deep. Straight in there. You know what? I'm usually just sort of thinking about the things I need to do, like just normally. I don't really, I think as I've matured emotionally as a person, as I've gone through waves in my career of, coming up, sort of questioning things and various different emotions. I think that at the moment and for the last several years, also, being sober for a long time and things like that. I think I used to dwell on things if I'd have coming back to my hotel after a gig, for example, if I hadn't put quite the perfect last track on, or, I would always be like, oh, I wish I'd have played that last, or, I should have played a bit deeper, or, so sometimes obviously I'd come home and think, oh, that was great. And, I did a really good job. But I think that now I don't really, it's done, So same, I don't really have any thoughts about like regrets, and I don't really have any sort of negative thoughts anymore, to be honest with you. I do still, but not really anything that I can recall or that, that plays a huge impact in my life. So yeah, to be honest with you, I'm usually just so tired. I go to sleep. If I can't sleep, I do a little bit of a meditation to try and sleep if I know I need sleep. Or I just, try and make some beats or something. But
sounds more peaceful.
Definitely more peaceful. Yeah.
How long has the sobriety been a thing for you?
8 years.
Wow. 8 years. And you're still able to keep it going. I mean,
honestly, I was lucky. Certain things happened to me over the course of sort of from about 2015 to 2019, where I cut certain things out of my life. I started taking care of myself a little bit more, food-wise as well, exercise-wise, after, 15 years of just going from party to party and making tunes, flying around, eating whatever. And I just, you get to that age where it starts to take a toll on your body, your mental health, as well. And I just sort of gradually cut things out. And it got to the point in about 2017 where I was just like, you know what, I need to take a break from even alcohol, and I'd always actually take a little break. In sort of January to March, I'd always sort of go to yoga at 5 a.m. every morning when I was living in LA, and I was always so happy in that time. And I started to think, why am I so happy in this period? And when I'm doing the thing that I love, music, touring, I'm like not as happy. And I think it was mainly because I just felt this clutch and pressure to at least have a few shots, behind the decks, or just to get myself on a vibe. And I just knew that had to stop. But Miami Music Conference was always my return to raving, a few months off, and it was my first time back. Everyone was there, party all week.
Kicks off the whole season.
Exactly. We used to go wild in those weeks. So, so I just realized that it was time for me to try and feel as good or as close to as good as I do when I was, off everything, and just, keeping healthy as much of the year as possible.
It's a lot of just like self-awareness, that part you said about why do I feel good when I'm not making music, or not making, but touring, whatever, and I don't feel good when I am doing the thing that I love. And I think a lot of people would probably try to think of 1,000,001 excuses why that was before they landed on the alcohol and the partying, because it is a hard thing to give up.
It's a hard thing to give up when you, I think, are so used to it, I mean, I've been drinking alcohol since I was 14 years old or something. And it's just almost from the first moment you start socializing in pubs where I grew up in Wales, or even in the local parks, it's just that was what you did on the weekends for your whole life. And then the work comes into it where you're going to work as well. And I think that the lines got so blurred for me between what was going to a party and what was going to perform and play music. And I kind of got confused sometimes. Am I looking forward to going there to party, or am I looking forward to going to play music? And I knew in my heart that I loved DJing, but I just associated it with the ups and downs that come with, you know, drinking and whatever. So it was kind of through several years of, you know, working on myself that I, you know, realized that, you know, and at the end of the day, if you're not working on yourself to be happier and to be a better version of yourself, then I think, you know, I mean, that's what life's about, isn't it? So
It is.
sounds a bit deep, but
You know, it is. Okay, so let's talk about where you grew up, because it wasn't necessarily a hub, right, for electronic music, Wales, where you were in Wales. Would you say that helped or hurt you with your career, not being in the mix from day one?
You know, I grew up in the 90s in North Wales, and the only radio station I could get was Radio 1. So I'd listen to Pete Tong every Friday, and that was like my, you know, pre-teenager, early teens education. It's the first time I heard like Stardust or Daft Punk or any of those kind of records on ever. So I wasn't cut off completely, and there was few things that were happening. As much as I was cut off, I was also in a period in the UK where dance music, it was sort of post the acid house revolution of the late 80s, and when almost kind of like now, where, you know, dance music became commercialized, so it was in the charts where you had, you know, Two Unlimited or you know, or Snap, you know, all these big, you know, Money Talks, all these tracks were in the top 40. So as a young teenager, that's what you're exposed to. So I'd see all these dance music videos on, you know, I didn't have MTV, but there was a program called The Chart Show that was on Saturday morning. So you'd see these dance music. So I wasn't cut off completely, but it was like the main, or one of the main musical things that were going on, even on a commercial level in the early 90s. So you were almost either into dance music or into Oasis when I was a teenager, you know, or both.
Yeah.
So yeah, did it help me? I don't know. I don't think I've never actually thought about whether it helped me or not, being cut off. I think maybe it slowed me down in a way, because when I ordered my first pair of turntables, I sort of convinced my mother when I was about 15 to get me some belt drive turntables, because, you know, this is how dance culture was in the UK. There was magazines, rave culture magazines, and one was called Eternity. There was a few of them. And it was basically go to all the big raves, Fantasia, World Dance, all these big raves that had once been illegal and now were like legal big raves, kind of like EDC in a way, but a little more 90s and a bit more sort of raw. You know, not as, probably the sound systems weren't as good and stuff, and the production probably wasn't as crazy as those kind of raves. But so these magazines would go to these raves and take pictures of what people were wearing, and then, you know, then afterwards you could go to the record store and buy the tape packs with all the DJ sets from those raves. So anyway, in the back of these magazines, there'd always be one advert for a shop that was based in London selling DJ equipment, starter packs, you know. And so I convinced my mother, and I got the turntables. And honestly, I didn't know anyone that DJ'd. I'd never met a DJ. And I had these two turntables. I bought 2 hardcore records first, happy hardcore records. And as soon as I played them, I was like, I don't even like this. And then I went to buy I bought a Masters at Work record, a Kim English Nightlife, I think, Masters at Work remix, and maybe Byron Stingley, Get Up Everybody or something like that. And And I knew I loved house music. From that day, I bought those records and I was, okay, this is it, house music.
Indoctrination.
Exactly. But I didn't know how to mix. I had no one to teach me, no YouTube, no internet, So for about 2 months, I was like, what do I do? It sounds so silly, but I was, I just could see I had a little sample button on the mixer. I was like, I don't know what to do. And then one night on Radio 1, Carl Cox did a little like radio thing on Pete Tong's show where, okay, so this is how you mix. You put the needle in the beginning, you time, you cue it up and you kick in on the fourth beat and then you move the pitch control and you match the speeds. And I was like, that's what you do.
And you had to listen to that. There was no visual.
No, there was no visual.
So, wow.
I just listened to it and then I was like, I didn't even realize that you match the speeds. I know it sounds so crazy now, but I didn't really know it just didn't, I had no one to show me. I'd never seen anyone mix, nothing. I was 15. And then from that day onwards, I was just hooked every night, mixing in my room. So
wow, what a story. So your like first iteration into throwing your own events was like true underground raves, right? Like you were throwing illegal warehouse vibes.
I mean, the first party I threw was before I had any turntables, and I was in I grew up in a village of 2,000 people, which is 2 miles outside a town of 10,000 people. And in my village, there's a little community center. And before I even had turntables, I threw a party where my mother had some sweets in the little shop, giving them to kids. I must have been about 13. And I just had 2 tape players and I was mixing mixtapes together.
No way.
And I was trying to mix these mixtapes and I had like full bright lights. We had some balloons and some kids were just with some balloons and there was me and my cousin who was like just standing behind me and I was trying to mix. And then amazing. A few years later when I got my belt drive turntables, there was a rugby club in my town and for some reason they would some kind of loophole, but they would allow like 15-year-old kids to buy beer. So a few times a year they'd allow kids to throw parties there, and I threw one there, and I called the party Blue because I had my turntables and I just had this one blue light, and I was really into speed garage at the time, so I was just mixing speed garage with about 50 kids just drinking beer, getting wasted.
Oh my god!
So that was those are the first parties I threw before, and then later on in London, warehouse raves.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so you started real young.
Yeah.
Something that I like, just everyone talks about now, it's that era, right? We need to get back to that era, but I do feel like there's a bit of romanticizing about the past. And we do that because there's not like photo evidence, right? Like we have now. So maybe you see it kind of with a veneer of like, and I'm sure it was incredible, but is there anything from that era, those raves that you threw in London and just like from years past that you think people over romanticize, or was it as amazing as everyone says it was?
I think that people do that a lot. And I do that. I call those sort of the early 2000s the golden era, my golden era for partying for sure. And I think that when people look back and think, oh, it was so amazing back then, what they're forgetting is that they were younger, they had less responsibilities, they could go out all the time. So it's not only that maybe certain things that you like were better then, it's also you're in a completely different place in your life. No one is the same raver at 35 as they were at 25.
So true. It's so true.
So you're obviously going to have these romantic memories of being 25 and, just like couch surfing and
no
going
hangover.
from party to party. No hangover. No, all the things that life throws at you over the years that pile up, the responsibilities and life, they don't exist when you're in your early 20s. You're just basically, living to party. You're making all the friends for the first time. Everything's is happening for the first time as well. But, is there things that people over romanticize? I mean, yes and no. I think that it's a very difficult thing to say whether people are over romanticizing it, because that's how they feel, you know? That's how people feel. You can't take that away from them, in the same way that those early 2000s in East London, you know, I threw my first rave there off Brick Lane. I don't know if you've been to London and you know Brick Lane, but it's in Shoreditch is like it's the kind of like Lower East Side-y meets Williamsburg kind of area, you know? And back then it was super raw. There was all these, you know, where you could party from Thursday to Monday night, Tuesday morning, and go from like, you know, this little warehouse party to this rooftop party to, you know, the party in a Russian bar club underneath. The Russians would hire out to somebody doing, you know, a 200-person rave, and the music was fantastic. It was the beginning of before electro house became like the Claxtons and all this. It was more of an electro clashy meets. So it's like Miss Kitten and the Glitz and all this kind of stuff. So mixed, and it was the first time that was being mixed with house, and it was, you know, the Crosstown Rebels was starting with Damien Lazarus and all this kind of that kind of era was in London was incredible. And then at the same time, you had the first 3 or 4 years of DC10 happening in Ibiza. So it was an amazing time for me. I loved it. But then, you know, now I ask some people about London, and I still hear about amazing, cool things happening in London under bridges. And I think that the difference is it's been pushed further out of the city, and it's not so central. But that's where everyone lives now as well, because they've been pushed out as well, because the rent's so expensive. So yeah, I think that people romanticize it as much as they feel they believe in it. Whether it's better or not, I think the no phones thing is the only certainty.
Agree.
That you can put difference between now and then, where having no phones in a party, especially an underground party, it does make a difference in the vibe.
Yeah, I agree. I think about that all the time. I feel like I graduated college in 2014, and that was like the last group to really not have camera phones that worked well. Like, why would you take a picture with your BlackBerry? It was, you know, and I'm just like, thank God, because who knows how many. Now we're at the point where, you know, that's when they said, don't post anything on Facebook you wouldn't want your employer to see or whatever. But now we're at the point where there's so much stuff out there, like everybody's compromised. But yeah, I mean, I agree. The phones thing that's a hard line in the sand.
Yeah, that's a hard line in the sand, definitely.
You, though, growth and evolution and change is inevitable. Your growth with your Paradise Party was explosive. That was the video that I made about you that got us connected from DC10 to Amnesia. Besides the fact that people were filling rooms and you didn't have physical space anymore, what was the indicator to you that, okay, it's time to take this to the next level?
To leave DC10 and go to Amnesia, you know, there was a few factors. I'd been, you know, you got to remember, I was going to DC10 from 2000. I was there every Monday as a raver. You know, I remember the first time I went there, it was because it used to be an after hours. It started at 8 a.m. So everyone would go to Space, now called High, for this, you know, this great party that they used to throw there called We Love, or Home, and then We Love Sundays at Space. And then everyone kind of wait around. I used to finish at 6 until 8 a.m. and go to DC10. And I remember being in the inside room, the inside of DC10, playing food. They just have a foosball table in there. You're talking like the whole place had like 300 or 400 people in it then, you know? Mm-hmm. And then I remember seeing a light, like a door open and bright lights, like, what's over there? And then going out and the terrace was there. And I think that, you know, Tanya Vacano was playing on just a table on the floor level, or maybe a bit raised actually. That might be my memory playing tricks on me, but I'm pretty sure. And I honestly, I sat on a piece of cardboard on the side of the dance floor, just like listening to the songs for about 4 or 5 hours. You know,
Wow.
that's how many people there you could sit on. They had cardboard around the side so people could just like, you know, kind of like, I don't know what the word is, mong out or whatever, just like hanging, listening to the tunes. And it was great. And I went back literally every single week for, I don't know, until I started playing there in 2006. And even when I was playing there 4 or 5 times a summer, then I'd still be there every Monday. And then when I was a resident, me and Seth Troxler became like kind of the main residents, I think around 2008. It closed in 2008, reopened. The police shut it down for a year, and then it reopened in 2009, and then we became the residents. I was there every Monday. And then I started Paradise, and I was there every Wednesday. So from 2000 until 2019, 19 years, I was pretty much in that club every single week.
That's insane.
So it's a lot of time. DC10, I love the place, honestly. But by the time we got to, when we did Paradise in 2018, the crowd was great. You know, all the DJs were playing so well. I really felt like I, you know, mastered what kind of sound to play on that terrace for Paradise. And the party was, I stepped away at the end of the season. I was like, that couldn't have gone any better. It wasn't 1 week or, you know, a couple of weeks. We could have squeezed a few more people in there, but that's only really benefiting, making a bit more money. It's not really benefiting the party. So I was like, this is great. And then 2019 was again, the production crowd, it was amazing again. And I was like, what else can I really do another 5-10 years just trying to keep this level of the party being as good as it can be? I feel like we could do it, but what are we reaching for here? You know, like what are we trying to achieve? And then the opportunity came along to move to Amnesia, and I felt at the time that there hadn't been a lot of my friends hadn't been going to Amnesia for a good few years since Music On had left, and I felt that, you know, it was obviously a bigger space, more scope to do more production, and it just felt like the right time, and so we moved. And then the pandemic happened, and we had to delay it a few years. But
Yeah, great timing. So I've had, this is 140, 150 episodes almost at this point, and there's 2 people that get brought up on my show the most. One is Dr. Fresh and one is you. And you are referenced as the artist that, you know, gave them advice and helped them with their careers, or played one of their tracks and finally gave them their big break to kind of break through, or just that they look up to you as an inspiration. So, you know, whether you assume the role or not, you call it as a mentor. What have your mentors done for you to put you in the spot that you're at?
My mentors. So I think that the two biggest mentors in my career were probably Dan Ganassia and Damien Lazarus. The 2 labels I was signed to first. I became very good friends with both of them. Dan Ganassia, him and his wife Sophia, let me stay in their spare room one summer in Ibiza when I couldn't afford to get a place, and, you know, really helped me. That was the time I signed I was just sort of making the first bits of music that was playable out, and I made a track called Amazon, and I signed it to Freakin' Chic, Dan Ganassia's label at the time. And I always looked up to him, amazing DJ, super, you know, amazing people. We were really tight, good friends. And then, and Damien as well. I always really admired Damien's sort of forward thinkingness, his drive as well. He's got laser focus. If he wants to, you know, put on a festival, sign an artist, he's always, so I see things that I aspire to in the way that he's done things. And same thing with Dan, you know, the way that he was fusing house with electro, with soul. And, you know, I've always been a DJ, especially that likes all kinds of styles. And I think Dan's always done that really, really well with his own flavor. So those two guys, and will always be the two that I feel like helped me the most in the beginning of my career, and I'll always be super grateful to. There's other people that have helped me, gave me my first gigs and stuff. Someone called Rosanna Maldonado, who gave me the residency first in Manumission in Ibiza in 2004 after hearing a mix CD from a friend. So, there's breaks like that, but musically and in the industry, yeah, Dan and Damien.
Wow. Yeah, that's what it's all about. What's your relationship with success now? You've done so much. You're a workaholic, clearly. You have labels and parties, and you're invested in music businesses. You just have so many tentacles out in the music industry. So what does success mean to you in 2025?
Good question. It's funny. I have a strange relationship with success because I can honestly, hand on my heart, say that I've never aspired to be successful at this, especially in the early years. There's been moments, and to be honest, if I think about it hard, the moments where I thought I need to step this up has been times where I have stepped it up. And, I remember just before I made Hungry for the Power, I started to see, other DJs that were at the level of me doing this, doing that. And I was like, you know what, I need to keep doing what I'm doing, but I need to, focus a bit more, which usually meant dialing in the partying a bit, spending more time in the studio, really sort of working on pushing my sound in a certain direction or trying some new things, whatever. But for the most part, I just try and, play, make, and do the things that I feel is going to make me happy. And of course, that I feel is, especially nowadays, I'd be lying if I said that when you're in the studio and you make something, you're not thinking, is people going to like this? Are people going to dance to it? Is it going to sound good on this big sound system? I wish I did that a little bit less, and I try to. But I think that, like everyone, when you're making art, you want people to experience it. You want people to feel it, to feel something. But my relationship with success is I feel like I'm good. I feel like, sometimes when I've taken on a few too many gigs, or, the demos are piled high and I've been neglecting them and I've got all these things going on, I think, not should I retire? To be honest with you, going back to originally, I honestly feel like before I became sober, or before I started calming it down, I was almost planning my retirement, to be honest with you. I was like, okay, I can do this for 5 more years. And then as soon as I kind of made that separation and was able to have 2 hours sleep after a gig and not be going through an airport sweating and just and I think that eliminating that helped me. But I was like, oh, you know what? And I also had all this extra time to find more music, and I was also aware of, and I don't want to go on about the surprise thing too much, but, one of the things that's funny is, and it took me about a year to realize this, it took a few years, is that, any DJ that tells you, and I do know a few DJs that tell you, I killed it every time, it's nonsense, Sometimes in your heart, you smashed it. Sometimes you did really well, it was good. Sometimes it was okay. Sometimes you think, you know what, I should have gone a bit deeper, or I should have done this, it wasn't quite right. And then maybe sometimes you thought, oh, that was really bad. That thankfully that doesn't happen barely ever. But it's a varying degree. And sometimes, and I think the most common one is, for me, I know that I played really well for a good chunk of it, and maybe the beginning or maybe the end or maybe a half an hour in the middle was just okay. For me, doesn't matter what anyone else says. And I think that being sober and being drunk, let's say, the difference is that I think you're probably, it's probably the same, but when you're drunk, you finish it, you don't know. Sometimes you think, because I've got people that finish their set and, yeah, I was wicked. And you're like, I wasn't that good. It wasn't that good. The crowd was not reacting and then, but when you're, at least when you're sober, you know.
Yes.
So you're not kidding
100%.
yourself and okay, you know what? For tomorrow's gig, I need to go and dig for some more tunes. I need to freshen things up or whatever. But
that awareness is painful sometimes, though.
it is. Awareness is painful, and it's I think that for me it made me a better DJ. Once I learned how to use some techniques to get onto the vibe and connect with people. I actually use breath work before I play, just because I feel like that oxygen rush gets me buzzing to play. So I'm not turning up like, then or otherwise it's like half an hour. You're like, okay, I'm there. So, but I can't remember what the original question was now.
No, it's good. No, it was good. It was your relationship with success.
Your relationship with success.
No, I think it's so important for artists to hear from, especially from people who've been sober for a while, because when you're newly sober, it's like, this is the best thing in the world. And I've experimented with like taking a year off, and I call it low alcohol, right? Like it's like once in a while, whatever. But I remember how preachy I was in that first year. But then you realize, okay, it's not that easy to keep it up for many years in a row. And not like, we're not talking addiction here, right? We're just talking about people who,
no.
I just took a year off just to experiment too, and just whatever. But I think it's really important that artists hear that from you, because you've proven that you can do this and have a successful long career in the alternative. It's funny, alternative is lifestyles usually means people who do like crazy shit, but in DJ world, it's like, no, you're sober.
I think for me, something I learned along that maybe from my parents a little bit, but it's you cannot judge anyone for doing anything. I partied hard for a long time, and a lot of it was social anxiety. I remember the first time I was in the Tea Bar in London, which was this great place that my friend used to run, Darren Smart. He passed away several years ago, but it was like the Meet Fabric used to do after parties there. I had a party that a couple of my friends started, and I'd be resident at, called Dig Your Own Rave. And it was a Sunday after hours party, and the place was great. Damien Lazarus used to do a Monday night show there occasionally called Stink. And it was like the meeting place for all of the underground house crew in London. But basically in there, I remember I was a local DJ in London, and maybe I'd played Fabric once. I hadn't really released any music there. And I remember the first time a random person came up to me who I didn't know, was like, "Oh, hey, Jamie, yeah? Well, I heard your set somewhere." And I was like, it was weird, it's such a weird thing. People don't understand, for people you don't know to come up and know something about you, but you don't know who they are, especially when you're trying to party and, you're just like, oh. And I remember I remember so distinctly that feeling of social anxiety becoming like, oh, I've kind of got to talk to somebody all of a sudden that I don't, know. And I've never been an introverted person. And I think that, I started partying a lot just to sort of be out of my shell a little bit, or to know this, this social pressure. So that was why I probably hit hard. And I was never crazy, I never felt like I needed rehab or anything like that. But there was moments where it definitely went too far. And I think that, but one thing I didn't do, thankfully, when I did stop everything, was I always felt comfortable around people, and I never judged. If somebody wanted to do whatever, rack up mad lines or do anything in front of me, I was like, no, sorry, not no. I was like, just do your thing, I never felt like that, and I still feel like that,
But it always makes other people feel guilty if you
makes
don't
other
do
people
it.
Feel, that's the,
I
what's the worst
get that
thing,
all the time too, and I'm just like, just do it. I don't care if you do it or don't. Like,
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, I think a lot of people can relate to that social. I know I can relate to I get weird. I've had it a couple times. People, this is my first time at AD, and people came up to me, I love your podcast, and I get caught off guard too.
Yeah.
It's a crazy thing, but it's an incredible journey that you've had.
It's amazing. Listen, I would not swap it for the world. People, 99.9% of the time, are super nice and respectful, and I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I like being able to get reservations in Ibiza or get free drinks or whatever. There's perks, I just got some free clothes in the store out there. It's I ain't gonna lie. It's there's a lot of perks and also, people for the most part are just nice, and they just want to show you or tell you that they like your music or they like the set or whatever. It's just something you need to get used to, and it's something that comes with the territory. I cannot imagine being like Leonardo DiCaprio or somebody where you cannot go anywhere.
Right.
That would be hard.
Yeah.
But at this level, I think it's completely manageable, and it's nice. So yeah.
Well, thank you for taking the time to do this.
No worries.
I could talk to you for hours, but you have other things to do.
No worries.
Jamie Jones is living proof that you can have it all in dance music. The global brand, the family, the respect of your peers, the longevity. But here's the thing, and this is me saying this. Look at how he did it. Getting sober, keeping the same team for 20 years, treating people with respect. There is something to be said about that approach. While everyone else is chasing the next shiny object or burning bridges for short-term gains, Jamie built something sustainable by doing the fundamentals right. The discipline, the loyalty, the authenticity, it really all compounds over time. And I am so grateful he took the time to do this interview. I know how rare it is for him to sit down for conversations like this, so it means a lot to me. And to everyone listening, if this conversation resonated with you, you know where to find me. That's your weekly elevation. Remember, success in dance music isn't about luck, it's about strategy. I'll talk to you next week.